Greetings, loves. It is I, Tactical Girlfriend. Welcome back to the channel. I hope everybody's doing well. Today for you, I have a review of this little guy. This is the Lead Steel Pandora PB-3. It's a really cool little red dot. Lead Steel is fairly new on the market as far as companies go. I was very curious. They're willing to send me a sample. They seem to be doing really cool things, so I figured I'd check it out and give my thoughts back to you. So without further ado, let's get into it. Now, before we dive in here, for full transparency's sake, what is my relationship to Lead Steel? Well, I don't have one. They simply reached out to me, asked me if I wanted to try out one of their optics. I was very intrigued, especially in the PB-3, because it's a natural competitor to something like the Aimpoint Acro in terms of what kind of role it plays, and I've always kind of wanted an optic like that, so naturally I wanted to try one out. I talked to them a bit. They seem really cool. Seem like really stand-up people doing really good work, and I figured I'd give them a shot and see what happened. There's no other goods exchanged. I don't make any money off of this review. There's no other funds that come in from this review, so I'm gonna always give you the most brutally honest answer as far as reviews go. So now let's actually get into it. Alright, so first, what exactly is the Pandora PB-3? Well, if you take a look at it, you can probably tell it is a non-magnified red dot, but it's also a closed emitter red dot, meaning that you have glass on both ends of the body, thereby creating a sealed system in which the emitter is not at risk of getting obstructed by dust and dirt and grime, and thereby allowing it to actually operate properly under adverse conditions. Even pocket lint can obstruct your reticle, so if they're carrying something like this, this is still a really great option. Now, it is definitely bigger, but it's also, again, bigger because you get a really nice field of view. So overall, it's a really, really cool option. It's, again, very akin to the Aimpoint Acro. The Aimpoint Acro sells for $5.99. This comes in at $3.99. So it's a very attractive option for that reason alone. Moving on, let's talk about the construction of this optic. First of all, the body is made out of 7075 T6 aluminum. So for those of you who are not metallurgy nerds out there, that basically just means it's very nice and light, but also very tough. This thing can absolutely take a beating, I believe. I have not personally tested this in any real stressful manner, but it does seem to be very rugged and well built. It feels solid, and that seems pretty good to me. We'll see how it holds up over time, but so far so good. Also, the body has Type 3 hard coat anodizing on it, so it comes in a number of colors: black, FDE, and jade. So you got some nice options there. Furthermore, it's got lens sealing plates on the front and back. These are just additional plates that are screwed in on these lenses to help reduce the impact if it were to ever get hit by anything. It's also got some standoff on both of these plates, so that reduces the chances of anything hitting it and actually puncturing or shattering the glass. So I definitely appreciate those features. Furthermore, it's got some serrations on the very top of the body. Not a lot of optics do this, or not enough in my opinion, but it's really nice to see here, because if you do mount this to something like a handgun and you try to cycle your slide manually, this just gives you something to grab onto, and especially if your optic is wet for some reason, if you're outside, that just really helps ensure that you get a good grip on it if you are the kind of person who cycles their slide with their optic. Furthermore, it's got a beveled battery cap to help with holstering. It also uses the Acro P2 footprint, and if you have a gun that's already set up for the P2, that's great. This will mount straight to it. If you don't worry, they make a bunch of different adapter plates for it. There's also tons of other Acro adapter plates out there, so whatever you have, it's almost certainly covered. Now, the weight of this is 2.3 ounces. That's pretty dang light, especially for a mailbox style optic of this sort. So overall, I think the construction is really impressive. It seems very rugged, and still being nice and lightweight and minimal. Doesn't seem obnoxious or anything like that, and it seems really well thought out. Next, let's talk about the electronics on this optic. First of all, the reticle itself is a plain old red dot. It's 3 MOA, and that means it's plenty big enough to pick up quickly and intuitively, and it's small enough to still be able to use effectively at further ranges. So I think it's a really good balanced choice there. I generally like 6 MOA dots on my handguns, but 3 MOA is plenty for me, and I'm not complaining about it. Now, as far as the windage and elevation adjustments go for zeroing, it's 1 MOA per click, so it's not terribly granular, but at the same time, this is something that is generally designed to go on handguns, so I don't think most users are actually going to complain about that. Now, the brightness controls, you'll notice, are right here on the very top of the body. They're also recessed, so it's a lot less likely to bump into them accidentally. And that's really nice. Furthermore, having them on top also ensures that, because I think having buttons on the side of your optic can often lead to, again, getting your settings messed up inadvertently, because a lot of people rack their optics on their slides or their handguns by grabbing it by the side. And so this really thereby reduces the chances of that, or if you're just reholstering, maneuvering around with the gun, what have you. I do generally think having the buttons on top is really smart. As far as the settings go, there are 7 daylight settings and 3 night vision settings. And I did find that shooting this in the sun in broad daylight was plenty acceptable. It was plenty bright. It wasn't quite Aimpoint burn your retinas out bright. It couldn't get up quite to that, but it got pretty close. So plenty good for daylight. Night vision, it works fine too. Those settings were very usable. So really big fan of that. As far as the battery itself goes, it's a CR2032, which is advertised to run at some of the middle settings for about 30,000 hours and up. So plenty of runtime on this thing. There are no other fancy electronic gizmos in here. Again, very simple red dot. Moving along, let's talk about the glass. Now, the glass on this is 30% bigger in terms of surface area than the Acro P2. So you get a really, really nice wide field of view in still a very small housing, and that's really impressive. I found the glass to be very forgiving, no matter how I presented on target. It was very easy to find that red dot, even if it wasn't quite perfect. Compare that to a smaller optic where you have a very narrow field of view. You might be struggling to find your reticle, wiggling your gun around to get it back presented properly on target. Now, that's a training issue, but it is good to just have those tolerances so that if you are in less than ideal conditions, you can still have an optic that you can readily get on target very quickly. Furthermore, that really nice wide field of view just makes it easier to see your target through the optic. Again, you should be using both eyes to aim, but I do like having more glass than less, and if I can get that, I will. Now, the glass itself is really nice and clear. It does have a very slight blue tint to it, but it's not quite like RMR blue tint. It's not distracting or anything like that. I find it plenty usable. And it has plenty of good light transmission. I would say it's not quite like an EOTech, for example, but that's a very different technology. And to be fair, for something that is a closed emitter red dot, I think the light transmission is actually really good on this. Furthermore, testing it under night vision also showed me pretty similar results, not quite EOTech light transmission, but plenty usable in terms of the image. Next, let's just talk about my shooting experience with this optic. First of all, I really enjoyed it. It did not give me any problems whatsoever. I can't necessarily comment on its durability. This is an initial review. I did not torture test this. I did not hit it with a baseball bat or run it over with a monster truck, but it seems very tough and well built, so I do trust it. Again, initial review. I can't really give you any data on this. You'll probably just have to find some other people who are more willing to smash their optics than me, but I do trust it so far. I also shot this optic in the rain. It was well sealed, it didn't fog up, I didn't have any issues with the leakage in the nitrogen purging or anything like that. Now, in terms of parallax, I did test for that. I did shoot one shot dead on with a reticle in the middle of my field of view, and then I moved that reticle to the extreme edges on each side, all 4 sides of the optic. And what I found was that there probably was about 1 to 2 MOA deviation from the center in terms of my shooting parallax. And for an optic with a field of view this big, that's kind of crazy. It's effectively parallax free. Now, is there parallax there? Yes, I absolutely demonstrated that it does have parallax, but effectively you're not going to notice it, especially if you're not putting your reticle on the very edge of your glass. So parallax is a really good way to judge the quality of glass, and this one absolutely soared with flying colors. So very impressive there. I'm really happy to report that. Now, I know I just said a lot of really great things about this optic, but what about the bad? Well, let's get into it. And by bad, I mean extremely minor gripes. First and foremost, I do wish the windage and elevation 0 adjustments were a little bit more granular, maybe 0.5 MOA per click. Again, if you are using this on a handgun, you probably almost certainly don't need anything more granular than 1 MOA, which is what it is. If you put this on something like a PCC or some sort of rifle even, it might be nice to have a little bit more granularity to those adjustments. Again, super minor gripe, very big edge case there. As far as the adjustments go on the screws, they use a hex key, and I do wish it was something a little bit more universal like other optics that use things like flathead screwdrivers or casings that have been spent. Just having more common tools to adjust this thing with would be really, really nice. Again, I get that they're small adjustment screws, so you kind of have to do certain things with those certain ways, so I get it, but again, very minor gripe. I also do wish it had shake awake technology. I know I'm asking for something kind of fancy there, but for a battery that does last over 30,000 hours, it's not a huge deal, but again, it would really help with my peace of mind that I wasn't burning the battery actively while this optic was in storage. It just is a nice thing to have. It is a bit of a luxury, but I do appreciate it if it's possible. I also wish it had a lockout mode for the brightness settings. Again, I know that the controls are recessed. They're hard to accidentally bump, but again, peace of mind does come with that. If there was a lockout mode for the brightness settings, that would just be another really nice feature to have. Okay, so closing thoughts. Do I recommend this optic? Well, if you are looking for a closed emitter optic with good field of view, robust construction, nice features, good glass quality, I would definitely strongly recommend this. For $399, that's an absolute steal. I'm personally such a fan of this optic that I'm going to put this on my CZ P10C and just run that moving forward on that gun. I really, really like that field of view. The glass looks great. It does what it's supposed to do and does it well, so far in my experience at least. And again, this is an initial review. I don't have lengthy experience with this optic, but so far so good. Color me impressed. I gotta say, this is a TGF wreck for sure. All right, let me address the 600-pound gorilla in the room. I know some of you are dying over here asking, TGF, what are you doing with that MP5? Where did you get that thing from? Relax, it's not my gun. I wish it were. But a friend of mine was really nice enough to let me borrow it for this review. I mounted this optic to it using the Titan Tacticool Acro claw mount, and yeah, it was just a really fun way to try out this optic, really. I would love an MP5, maybe someday, but I know some of you HK nerds are absolutely dying to geek out over that, so I'm going to flash the build list of the MP5 itself here on the screen for your personal edification. Enjoy. And so that concludes the review of the Lead Steel Pandora PB-3. I really enjoyed trying this optic out. I'm going to continue enjoying it and using it, and I'll give you any updates if there's anything pertinent that I do need to share about it. But so far, I'm going to say this is definitely a pretty strong rec for me if you are looking for an optic in that kind of form factor. I really hope that you found this video useful, if not just entertaining. If you did, please be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell too. And as always, I want to give a huge shout out to all my supporters on Patreon who make this magic happen. I really couldn't do any of this without you. I work a day job just barely enough to pay my rent, and then I dump a ton of money, energy, and time into this project, and I'm just trying to recoup as much as I can. So anything that you can contribute is really greatly appreciated. If you want to go help out, you can always go to patreon.com/tacticalgf. The biggest contributors are named at the end of the video. And so that's all I got for you today. I really appreciate you all tuning in. Please be good to each other out there. And as always, please take care. Bye! Stop. 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 No. Sit down. Sit down. Lola? Sit down.